Gail Lukasik, author of White Like Her, My Family Story of Race and Racial Passing, joins me now to discuss the complex reckoning that she had with her racial identity. And I want to start off, Gail, by saying thank you so much, first of all, for joining us here on Amplified. You say that you now identify as mixed race. I would love for you to walk us through the journey that you went through in coming to that definition for yourself.
Well, it was quite a journey. It wasn't easy. I discovered in 1995, while going through the 1900 Louisiana Census records, looking for my grandfather, Azima Frederick, I found him and his family, and I also discovered that they had been designated as Black. I had no idea. It came as a complete surprise to me. So that began my journey. From there, you know, I spoke with my mother. My mother lived in Ohio. I live in Illinois. And I waited till she came for a visit and asked her about it. And in the meantime, I had also sent away for her birth certificate. And when I received her birth certificate, it said that she had been designated in Louisiana in 1921 as COL, which is for colored. So I said to her, Mom, I found your father on the census record. They're listed as Black. And then I said, I also have your birth certificate, and it says you're colored. And she looked at me and she said, I don't know what birth certificate you have, but mine says I'm white. So I thought, no, wait a minute. I had some other research I had done, and I told her, I said, I'm willing to go get all this information and show it to you. And she said, well, first of all, she got very quiet. And then she looked at me and she said, you can never tell anyone about this until after I die.
Wow.
So,
wow.
Yeah, I tried to talk her out of it. At that moment, I did not understand why she felt that way. Later I did, but it took a while for me to understand it. And my mom lived a long life, so I kept that secret for 17 years. And then...
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was, I did tell my husband and my children. After she died in 2014, something very serendipitous happened, because I was still sort of struggling with, you know, thinking of myself as a white woman who has Black heritage. Well, Genealogy Roadshow, which is a PBS program, was looking for stories from Louisiana and New Orleans area. So I applied to be on the show, because my husband said to me, you need to find out the truth of your racial heritage. And I agreed with him. And I was no longer bound by the oath I took, the vow I took for my mother, because she had passed. So the show did confirm that my mother's and my heritage, we have Black heritage. They actually brought up, the first document they showed was the 1940 census, and on that census, my mother was listed as Negro.
Wow. Wow.
It was NEG.
You know, you wrote something
Negro.
about your mother. You wrote something about your mother in 2017 that I want to quote back to you, because it really stuck with me. You said, I tried to break through my mother's wall of silence, but every time I tried, she politely but firmly changed the subject. Her refusal to talk about her mixed race only fueled my curiosity. How had she deceived my racist white father? Why was she so fearful and ashamed of her Black heritage? I wonder, did you ever find the answers to any of those questions, or at the very least get a better understanding?
Not from her. Toward the end of her life, I visited her when she was in a rehabilitation center. She was quite ill. And I tried to bring up the topic again, and she just refused to talk to me. She just would not talk about it. So I had to talk to other people. After she died, I reached out to one of her first cousins who was a contemporary, And I asked her about it. And I call her Cousin Eula. Cousin Eula was living as a Black woman in California. And she said that my mother did not want my father to know, and that everyone in the family kept her secret.
Wow. You know, now that you've been on this journey and you've come to a place where you are able to identify as a mixed race person, I think a lot about something else that you wrote. You talk about the importance of culture and how all of this plays out. And for me as a Black person, you know, there's one thing culturally being Black, having grown up as a Black person in a Black family, also in a Black community, and then being very identified with the culturalisms of being Black. And then, you know, for you, having grown up entirely white identified and now thinking about culture as you identify yourself, I wonder, how have you reckoned with that, and what role culture has played in the evolution of your understanding of your identity?
Well, it was, you know, I have a feeling, well, I know that if I had not written this book and I had not gone on the lecture circuit and been on television, radio, that I probably would have continued to identify as a white woman with Black heritage. But every time I would give a presentation or a talk, that was the question. When it came to the question period, they wanted to know how I identified. And depending on who was asking the question, there were different reactions. I remember I was giving a talk in a library with an all-white audience, and this one woman got very upset over my story and actually got kind of confrontational with me and said, well, I'm looking at you and I can see what you look like, but I really don't know what you are. What are you anyway? So I had,
what are you?
What are you? Yeah, and that was the first time that it's ever happened to me in my life. No one ever questioned my race. You just have to look at me, and why would you question my race? So the next time I gave a talk, well, it was about a year later, I think, in St. Louis, I had a mixed audience, and a Black woman asked me the same question. She was much more polite, though. And I had an answer. I said, I'm a white woman with Black heritage. And she said, I'm so glad you gave that answer. If you had given any other answer, it would have been wrong. So I was becoming confused about this whole identity thing. How was I going to identify? And those two encounters sort of started me on this journey of thinking about, what is my race? And I came to the conclusion, I mean, I could just look at DNA and say I'm mixed race, because I am. I have 7 to 9% African heritage. But I think it was more than that. I think it was writing the book and going back into the Frederick family all the way to the early 1700s in Louisiana, finding 2 enslaved women in my family tree, tracing how my family suffered from racism from the very beginning in this country. And then, you know, that's part of my heritage. And maybe that's where we talk about heritage and culture. And I thought, you know, from now on, it feels more comfortable for me to say I'm mixed race. And I hope it does make people think. I hope they go, well, how can she say that? She doesn't look it.
Wow.
But I want people to question that.
Wow. Ms. Gail Lukasik, thank you so much for sharing your story. This book is so poignant, and thank you for taking us on the journey with you to identity and self-exploration. Everybody go get the book, White Like Her, My Family Story of Race and Racial Passing. Thank you so much for being here on Amplified. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.